What are schemas? Schemas are the mental representation of pre-existing knowledge of an individual about their world, about their environment. These are the mental structures that how an individual see their world around them, and how they organize when we perceive things around us, how we perceive it, how we consider those things, and how we organize and finally store in our memory. So this mental structure and mental framework is known as schema. We'll do one example where you'll understand that what exactly it is. So let's do some practice here. Okay, so this is a paragraph that I am putting here. Now you have to rate the comprehensibility of this passage from 1 to 7. You have to tell me that how well you have understood of this passage and what do you interpret out of this passage. Okay, the procedure is actually quite simple. First, you arrange items into different groups. Of course, one pile might be sufficient depending on how much there is to do. If you have to go somewhere else due to lack of facilities, that is the next step. Otherwise, you are pretty well set. It is important not to overdo things. That is, it is better to do a few things at once than too many. In the short run, this may not seem important, but complications can easily arise. A mistake can be expensive as well. At first, the whole procedure will seem complicated. Soon, however, it will become just another facet of life. It's difficult to foresee any end of the necessity. That is, it is better to do a few things at once than too many. In the short run, this may not seem important, but complications can easily arise. A mistake can be expensive as well. At first, the whole procedure will seem complicated. Soon, however, it will become just another facet of life. It is difficult to foresee any end to this necessity for this task in the immediate future, but then one can never tell. After the procedure is completed, one arranges the material into different groups again. Then they can be put into the appropriate places. Eventually, they will be used once more and whole cycle will then have to be repeated. However, that is part of life. Now, when you do this exercise, when you read this paragraph, you have to tell me how much have you understood and what exactly the person is going to, is trying to say in this passage. You have to comprehend it and tell me from the rating of 1 to 7. Now again, I'm going to show you the same paragraph with a bit of change. Now you can see here the paragraph is exactly the same, but now the change is that now we have a heading, washing clothes. So now when you read this, you see that it is all about washing clothes. And when you start reading the paragraph, everything starts to make sense. For example, first you arrange items into different groups, like we do in washing clothes. White clothes separate, colored clothes separate. If you go to somewhere else due to lack of facilities, there is next step, and it is not too important to overdo things, and so on. Now I can give you time, or you can just pause the video and read the whole paragraph once again. It will make much more sense to you and it will be much more meaningful to you after you know that it is about washing clothes. Now here we can say that what is schema? It is an organized mental representation of everything that we have learned. For example, I'll just give you an example here. Let's say if there is a small child who has seen in his home that there is a table. Okay, now it has 4 legs, it has a flat top, and we keep things on that thing. So it is called a table. That has been told by his parents. Now let's say he goes to school. There also he sees a table. He will not start calling that a chair, or he will not ask what is this. We will tell him that this is table. Later on, when he goes to a birthday party or to some guest place or anywhere else at all, he will see oval shaped, 3-legged, maybe not 4-legged, and different styles of tables. Every time, each time when he sees this particular object, he will not ask again and again, what is this, what is this, what. He knows that this is table, and we keep things on this. It could have 3 legs, it could have 4 legs, it can be rectangle, square, triangle, circle, whatever shape it can be of. So what has happened? He has got a schema of table in his mind. So whenever he sees things, he is perceiving, he is able to organize. He sees that thing and puts in the memory under the table category. So that is what schema is. I'll give you another example. For example, a child goes, child is very small and they start going to birthday parties. Okay, the first or the second time they see. and they see there are a lot of balloons, everybody is clapping, singing song happy birthday to you, there is a cake that is coming, we have to give the gift, we also get a return gift. So when they do it a few times, they know that this is what the concept of birthday party is. Now later on in life, when he goes, let's say balloons are not there, he will not say, oh, this is not a birthday party, is this a wedding? No, he will know, even if balloons are not there, or maybe cake is of different style, or maybe people are not singing or clapping, or they're just cutting the cake, whatever it is. The person now, with the moment he sees any scene, it's altogether a different, unique, new scene. But every time the person is not going to ask, what is this? They know that this is a birthday party. This is a restaurant. This is how you have to behave in a restaurant. These are the steps that we follow. We come to the restaurant, we see the menu, we place the order, and we eat, and then we pay the bill. It is the procedure that we follow, and every time it is done like that. So whatever we see around us in our environment, we perceive that and organize that into our categories that are already made in our brain. These are the mental frameworks, mental structures. These are called the schemas, the concepts under which we are able to organize. Now schema makes our life very easy and very comfortable. Now imagine a person, there was no concept called as schema. A person, every time you go to a new place, you're totally blank. What I'm supposed to do? Is this a party? Is this a restaurant? Is this a table or a chair, or what is it? I'm seeing it for the first time. So every time you'll be just so confused, and you have to pick and choose, think too hard or make such an effort to perceive the thing and categorize that what exactly it is. So schema makes our life very easy because it categorizes, it organizes all the concepts under the mental framework, and we know whenever we encounter a new thing or a new place, a new episode or event, we know that this kind of a thing I can organize under school, under table, under furniture, or under birthday party, or whatsoever. So this is what schema is. We can always talk about schema. These are the mental representations. These are the simplified version. It is filtered, processed, and probably oversimplified version of reality. People are walking around with highly personalized sunglasses that filter their experience of the world. So a schema is a mental representation of an individual's pre-existing knowledge about the world and experiences in the world. Schemas are mental structures that organize how individuals perceive and organize the world from a cognitive viewpoint. And this has a considerable impact on human behavior, memory in particular. So we know what schema is, that it is an organized knowledge structure, and it is also important for comprehending, learning, and remembering. More schemata and more developed schemata means more learning. So more that you see around things, more you are able to comprehend it, better you are able to learn. So this is what schema is. Schema is also based on your experiences, and experiences are very powerful. Human survival, adopt and adapt to physical and mental stimuli. Support this, we are going to do studies that is going to support the IB students. IB psychology students have to write this in their exam. So the very first study, that supports schema is the War of the Ghosts. Now IB students need to learn these studies to write in the 9 and 22 marker questions. So the study goes like this. One night, two young men from Gulag went down to the river to hunt seals, and while they were there, it became foggy and calm. Then they heard war cries, and they thought, maybe this is a war party. They escaped to the shore and hid behind a log. Now canoes came up, and they heard the noise of paddles and saw one canoe coming up to them. There were five of men in the canoe, and they said, what do you think? We wish to take you along. We are going to the river to make war on the people. One of the young men said, I have no arrows. Arrows are in the canoe, and they said, I will not go along. I might be killed. My relatives do not know where I have gone, but you, he said, turning to the other, may go with them. So one of the young men went, but the other returned home, and the warriors went up the river to a town and on the other side of Kalama. The people came down to the water, and they began to fight, and many were killed. But presently the young man heard one of the warriors say, quick, let us go home. The Indian has been hit. Now he thought, oh, they are ghosts. He did not feel sick, but they said he had been shot. So the canners went back to Gulak, and the young man went ashore to his house and made a fire. And he told everybody and said, behold, I accompanied the ghost and we went to fight. Many of our fellows were killed and many of those who attacked us were killed. They said I was hit and I did not feel sick. He told it all and then he became quiet. When the sun rose, he fell down. Something black came out of his mouth. His face became contorted. The people jumped up and cried. He was dead. Now, this study was basically given by Bartlett in 1932. That was just the paragraph before the actual study starts, which was made to read. So, participants heard an unfamiliar North American folktale. Afterwards, they were asked to retell the story many times. The recalled story was distorted in a number of ways, specifically alterations and omissions, changes in length and words. The retelling of the story was influenced by the participants' personal cultural background. Bartlett found that their accounts were distorted in several ways that generally made them more consistent with the Western worldview. Specifically, he found the following. First is rationalization errors, that is making the story read more like a typical English story. Most of the errors were of this nature. Omissions, leveling, leaving out information that was not essential to the understanding of the story. Changes of order, events were sometimes reordered to make the story more coherent. Sharpening, adding details to fill in the gaps of the story. The aim of the study was to see if culture has any affects schema, processing and memory. It was a method was lab experiment, and procedure was that English participant asked to read a Native American folktale. So two methods of recall was there. One is serial reproduction. Participant produces the story, second person has to reproduce the first reproduction and so on. Second was repeated production. Participants reproduce a story after intervals, 15 minutes to several years later. Now finding, story became shorter, story remained coherent, story became more conventional. Now this concludes that people reconstruct the past by trying to fit into existing schemas. People try to find a familiar pattern in experiences. And evaluation is that it is an unsophisticated methodology. There was no independent variable, dependent variable, nor control. So this was an emic approach. Now, what is the gist of this experiment? That when people saw this North American folktale, they basically, when they had to reconstruct, when they had to retell the story, there were a lot of alterations in the length. The whole thing became shorter because the major things, important things you remembered. The other important things which were not very important, those people had forgotten, the participants had forgotten. And then there were changes as in the words usually you use, omissions are there, editing is there as per your knowledge or as per your memory. In simple words, I will explain to you in a very layman language, like we all go to movie theaters, right? In theater, we watch a movie. When we see a movie, we don't remember each and everything exactly what happened. Now, obviously, you are not sleeping in the theater. You are watching the movie right away, right? You are watching every scene. You are listening to all the dialogues. But when you come out and if your friend asks you, what was the movie about? Can you please tell me in detail? Can you actually narrate the whole movie as it is to your friend? No, it is not possible. Maybe you'll only be able to remember the things that are personally important to you, that were funny, that were, useful, or it really touched you, that were emotional, or so on. So the ones you liked it, that only those important dialogues, only the important scenes are there in your mind, and the whole 3-hour movie or 2-hour movie is shortened to just 15 to 20 minutes, and in 15 to 20 minutes, you just tell the whole story to your friend. Then there is also omissions. There are also additions, as in there are some gaps, few things you don't remember and you think that I do remember, and you fill in the gaps with your own stuff in that very particular story, which actually did not happen, but you think that it happened. Okay, so these kind of alterations also happen. Schema was given by Jean Piaget in 1926. It explains that how people develop ideas from simple ideas to complex ideas. Schemas are formed and developed and sometimes revised on the basis of your experiences. Now we'll do two very important terms. One is assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation means that we see the world, understand it, interpret it, and try to adjust it with our current schemas, with our current understanding. So we have already formed some experiences, we already have formed some categories in our mind, and when we see the new experiences, when we encounter the new experiences or new objects, we try to perceive those objects and or events and try to fit into the existing schemas that we have of our current understanding. So this is called assimilation. Perceiving the object, perceiving the environment and trying to fit in to what is there already in our brain. For example, have you seen ever a cube of children, very small children play with this cube? There is this holes like, a circle one, star, triangle and rectangle, all these shapes. So the child has to pick up the shapes and tries to fit in. Now the circle one will not go through the star, or it will not go through the square. It will only go through the circle one, and the square piece will not go through the circle or any other. It will only go through the square. So what is this? This is called as assimilation. Whatever new they are thinking, whatever new they are seeing in their environment, they're picking up those blocks, and this box is your brain. You are trying to accommodate, you're trying to fit in these new things in already made concepts that you have in your mind. That is called an assimilation. What is accommodation? Accommodation means that when you see something, you have a new experience, you do not have that category in your mind and you adjust that later in your life to make it fit into your memory in your brain. That is called an accommodation. For example, in this box there is nowhere a piece or a hole for the star. Okay, now the person picks up a star shaped thing and tries to fit in. There is nowhere he can fit. There is only circle, rectangle and triangle. So this star thing he tries to fit. Now there is nothing else. He will make another place where the star can fit in. So this fitting in is called as accommodation. I will give you another example. Let's say a small child sees a cat. Now he has learned the concept of cat, that it says meow, how does it look, it's a furry kind of a animal, it has 4 legs, and how it runs, how it looks, so everything he knows. So that concept, the schema of cat is there in his mind. So now whatever he sees, black cat, brown cat, white cat, big cat, small cat, he knows that this is cat. So the moment he sees, he takes it and put it in his schema, the concept of category of cat. And he says, look, there is the cat. So now this is what assimilation. Whenever he sees that animal, he fits into that category that is already existing. That is assimilation. Now let's say this small kid goes to jungle or a zoo and there he sees a cub or a lion or tiger. And he says, look, cat, cat, cat. And the sister says, no, this is not cat. This is a lion, or this is a tiger. This is a cub. Okay, it is different from cat. Now he understands, okay, this is a cub, this is not a cat. Now he has done what? He has done the accommodation. He has made another category altogether where he can fit in all the tigers and the cubs or lions, whatever it is. So he has fit in that, which is different from cat schema. So this later on adjustment is called as accommodation. See this wheel, these are the characteristics of schema. If you look at the wheel, there are a lot of things, a lot of concepts that are written here, and it's all related to each other. So basically it consists of concepts that are related to each other. It encodes general knowledge that can be applied to many different situations. It can be hierarchical, that is consist of sub-schemata, different levels. Is unprincipled, that is it can be organized in infinite ways. So what we are trying to say is that every particular object can come under different schemas and it can have subcategories, sub-levels as well. For example, let's take an example of egg. Now egg comes in the schema of non-vegetarian, this category. It also comes under nutrition, nutritious food or something. It also comes under the category of animals, baby of animal, or the animals who give eggs, lay eggs. So that it can also come there. It can come into living things rather than non-living things. So one particular object, that egg is there, it is coming under so many schemas. Or there can be bigger schema, like furniture is a bigger schema. Okay, under furniture we have different schemas: schema of chair, of table, of dining table, of living room, of bedroom, that of different small other particular objects that are there. So we can have a bigger schema, subcategories in that schema, that is sub schemata, and then all these things are related to each other. So it's a very complex network of our general knowledge. It forms the whole general knowledge, and it is very complex network that is there. So it is not like different separate drawers in our memory or in our brain. It is on intellect. It's more like a web rather than separate storage boxes. There is this another example of hierarchical schema. If you say mineral is one schema, under mineral comes your metals and stone. Under metal comes your common and alloys, and under that further categories are there. So this is an example of hierarchical schema. Then we have this as thematic schema. What is this? It means there is a theme in that schema. Sky down slope, going skiing, go to mountains, put on down jacket, buy lift ticket, drink hot chocolate. So these all have different themes, these all have different procedures, and when linked together there is one big schema. So there can be number of infinite schemas under one schema and around that schema. So basically it's a concept. Mental frameworks are infinite in number, and they're also linked to each other. Let's also do types of schema. The first is script schema. What is script schema? Means there is a procedure, there is an order in which things happen. I just told you, I gave you an example sometime back in the starting of this session video, that when we go to a restaurant, there is a procedure. You don't ask for the bill first and then you ask for the menu. You don't pay first and then start eating. So there is a procedure that happens. When you go to a birthday party, there is a procedure, there is a script that happens. First greet them, give them the gift, then cut the cake, then clapping happens, singing song of the birthday song, and then eating, and then getting the return gift, and then going home, right? So there is this script happens that we know of. So this is called as script schema. Then we have self schema. Everything that we know about ourselves, all the concepts that we have in our mind about ourselves, our memories, what we feel, how we think, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, how I perceive myself, how do I think I look. So all these things about myself comes under self schema. Then we have social schemas. Everything and anything related to cultures, different countries. Americans are like this. They have this kind of features. People from Indonesia are different. From UAE, they have this kind of behavior. For Indians, they have such kind of behavior. So for each country, for each culture, we have different kind of schemas, concepts in our mind. So whatever is related to the society, the culture, the environment and countries and so on, this is called a social schema. What exactly schemas do? Schemas, they guide our behavior, because we can predict things. A lot of things we can predict. When we go out, we already have a concept in our mind that we have to keep our purse safe. There can be thieves, strangers are around, how we have to behave. When we're in a social setting, we have to behave properly. We can't just sit and relax and keep our legs on the table and sit in a restaurant. There is a proper way of presenting ourselves. So all these things we can predict that this is going to happen when I go out in the society, or when I am in a certain situation. So they guide our behavior, that how do we have to move in a certain circle, or how do we have to behave in a certain situation. They help us to make sense of current situation. Like I just told you, there was this very first activity where washing clothes was there. So the moment you knew that this is about washing clothes, the whole paragraph started to make sense, isn't it? So what happens, whatever we are looking around, it makes sense to us that, okay, this looks like this, the color is like this, or the shape is like this is the door, or this is a table, or this is a room. So everything, even if it is new, you have never been to a new hotel room, you have never been to a different country, you haven't been to a new restaurant or place, but when you go there, you already have in your mind that how I'm supposed to behave, or what I can predict that waiter will come and take my order, and later the bill will come. So there is a prediction for our behavior, and it is also important for our guiding our behavior. And it also helps to adapt us to the changing environments. So that is the accommodation that happens. I already told you about the assimilation, and then accommodation also keeps happening from day to day in our lives. Schemas also help us in expecting out of the world people and situations. So we can make expectation that this is a stranger, how they are going to behave. They will not talk openly, they will not share personal details or anything like that. We know that we are at a railway station, we know we are at the airport. So what do we expect? What is going to happen? So all these expectations makes our life very simple and easy. Imagine every time you encounter a new person, new situation, new event, or a new place, it will be so overwhelming if there was no concept of schema. Every time we look at a thing, it will be so effort making task that we think that what is it, we perceive it, we try to comprehend it, that what exactly is this, and then understand. So it is so brain draining. But schemas makes our life very easy. We know that in a given situation or a scenario, what we can expect from the person or from the place. We already did this activity in the beginning of the session. Now let's do a supporting study for the same. So this study is by Bransford and Johnson, 1972. Participants presented with the washing clothes passage without a title rated it as less comprehensible than participants that were presented with the title. Now the aim of the study was to determine if schema activation would result in better understanding and recall of an ambiguous text. The sample was made up of 52 participants. They were allocated to one of three conditions. In the no topic group, that is number was 17, participants heard a passage with no additional information. In the topic after group, they were also 17 participants were told the topic of the passage after hearing it. In the topic before group, there were 18 participants were told the topic of the passage before hearing it. So all participants were told that they were going to hear a tape recorded passage. They were told that they would later be asked to recall the passage as accurately as possible. All participants were tested at the same time, but they had different answer booklets. For those who were in the topic before the group, their instruction sheet said the paragraph you will hear will be about washing clothes. After listening to the passage, they were asked to rate their comprehension of the passage on a 1 to 7 scale. Then on the final page of the booklet, they were asked to recall the passage as accurately as possible. The topic after group's instructions included, it may help you to know that the paragraph was about washing clothes. Participants were given 5 minutes to recall. The researchers had decided on idea units before the experiment. Each participant's summary was independently scored by 2 judges using the list of 18 idea units. The result can be seen in the table below. So the comprehension level you can see is highest when the topic is given before. When participants know that it was about washing clothes, the understanding of the passage was 4.50. But when no topic was given at all or topic was given afterwards, in both the cases it is 2.29, 2.12, which is much lower than the 4.50. Then talking about recalling of the passage is much higher. When they know that the passage is about the washing clothes, it is 5.83. But in no topic and topic after, it is 2.82 and 2.65. So the evaluation goes like this, that the study used an independent sample design. Participant variability with regard to experience with washing clothes may be a confounding variable. A repeated measure design would not be possible as the text could not be reused. The study is simplistic and is easily replicated. This allows researchers to determine the reliability of the findings. The task is rather artificial, lacking ecological validity. However, the task is highly controlled, leading to high internal validity. This means that a cause and effect relationship can be determined. It is not possible to know that an actual laundry schema was active while listening to the text. There should be other reasons for the rate of recall. Good memory skills, confounding variable, which is a confounding variable, of course. The findings of the study that have been applied successfully to education, helping students to improve reading skills and retention of information. I hope you're enjoying this video till now and learning about the schema and various studies also that you have gone through. If you are understanding and enjoying the video, please don't forget to subscribe my channel, because here you will get all the material and everything about IB psychology as well as many general topics on psychology. Okay, going back to the topic about schema, I'm going to show you a picture for few seconds and here you go. What all do you remember? What all things were there? Okay, this was just a small activity that I made you do. Now post this, let's do a supporting study. This study was given by Brewer and Trians 1981. 86 individual participants were asked to wait in an office. After 35 seconds, participants were taken to another room where they were asked to recall everything in the room in which they had been waiting. Now, people showed a strong tendency to recall objects consistent with a typical office schema. Few people remembered items inconsistent with a typical office schema. The aim of the study was to investigate the role of schema in encoding and retrieval of episodic memory. The basic assumption of schema theory is that individuals' prior experience will influence how they remember new information. The sample was made up of 86 university psychology students. Participants were seated in a room that was made to look like an office. The room consisted of objects that were typical to office, like a typewriter, paper, coffee pot. There were also a table with tools and electronics. There were shelves along one wall, and then the other walls were decorated with posters and a calendar. There were some items in the room that would not typically be found in an office, for example, a skull or a toy shop. Finally, there were items that were omitted, such as books. So each participant was asked to wait in the professor's office while the researcher checked to make sure that the previous participant had completed the experiment. The participant did not realize that the study had already begun. The participants were asked to have a seat. All of the chairs except for one had objects on them. In this way, it was guaranteed that all participants would have the same vantage point in the office. The researcher left the room and said that he would return shortly. After 35 seconds, the participants were called into another room and then asked what they remembered from the office. When they finished the experiment, they were given a questionnaire. The important question was, did you think that you would be asked to remember the objects in the room? 93% said no. 30 participants carried out written recall and then verbal recognition. 29 participants carried out drawing recall, 27 carried out verbal recognition only. Now, the recall condition was such that participants were asked to write down a description of as many objects as they could remember from the office. They were also asked to state the location, shape, size and color of the objects. They were asked to write your description as if you were describing the room for someone who had never seen it. After this, they were given a recognition test in which they were given a booklet containing a list of objects. They were asked to rate each item for how sure they were that the object was in the room. 1 meant that they were sure it was not in the room. 6 meant that they were absolutely sure it was in the room. The questionnaire consisted of 131 objects, 61 were in the room, 70 were not. Then second was the drawing condition. In this condition, participants were given an outline of the room and asked to draw in the objects they could remember. And third was the verbal recognition condition. In this condition, the participants would read a list of objects and simply asked whether they were in the room or not. They found that when the participants were asked to recall either by writing a paragraph or by drawing, they were more likely to remember items in the office that were congruent with their schema of an office. That is, the expected items were more often recalled. The items that were incongruent with the schema of an office, that is skull, bark, screwdriver, were not often recalled. When asked to select items of the list, they were more likely to identify the incongruent item. For example, they didn't remember the skull when doing the free recall but gave it a 6 on the verbal recognition task. However, they had a higher rate of identifying objects which were schema congruent but not in the room. Location change. In both the drawing and the recall condition, they also tended to change the nature of the objects to match their schema. For example, the pad of yellow paper that was on a chair was remembered on being on the desk. The trapezoidal work table was recalled as a square. It appears that schema played a role in both encoding and recall of the objects in the office. The evaluation of the study goes like this, that in the written recall condition, the average number of correct objects recalled was 13.5. The average number of inferred objects recalled was 1.13. The objects that were remembered that were not in the room were books by 9/30, a filing cabinet, that is 3 out of 30, pens, that is 1 out of 30, a coffee cup, 2 out of 30, telephone 1 out of 30, a lamp 1 out of 30, and curtains 1 out of 30. The results do not indicate a high number of errors and do not explain why some recalled these objects yet others did not. There is no way to verify the schema of the participants prior to the experiment, but the researchers did a pilot study by using a questionnaire with students to determine schema consistent objects. There are ethical concerns about the deception used in the study. The participants had agreed to be in the study, but they were deceived about the true nature of the study and were not told when the experiment had actually begun. This was necessary to avoid demand characteristics. Hope that you have understood this study. It is very simple to understand that the participants who were in this room, they were able to recall those particular things which set in their schema. For example, in an office, it is obviously very common to have a table, a chair, a stapler, some stationery, shelves, some papers, files, and so on. So you will be able to recall these things because it is congruent with your memory, with your schema. In your schema of your office schema in your mind, you have these things already. It is obvious. So you're likely to remember those things. But the things like skull, you never see a skull in an office, right? Or maybe other things like that. So you're not able to recall such things which are not congruent with your schema. So that is why participants were less likely to recall a teapot or a skull or things like that, and were able to recognize or recall more of the things that were congruent with the schema of office. Okay, now please look at this picture. There are some wall clocks. I hope you have seen this picture. Now going forth, there is this supporting study by French and Richards, 1933, to investigate the schemata influence on memory retrieval. In the study, there were 3 conditions. Condition 1, participants were shown a clock with Roman numerals and asked to draw from memory. Condition 2, the same procedure except the participants were told beforehand that they would be required to draw the clock from memory. Condition 3, the clock was left in full view of the participants and just had to draw it. The clock used represented the number 4 with 4 lines rather than not the conventional 1 and V4. Okay, so the results were that in the first 2 conditions, the participants reverted to the conventional 4 notation, whereas in the third condition, the fourth notation because of the direct copy. They found that subjects asked to draw from memory a clock that had Roman numerals on its face typically represented is the number 4 on the clock face as IV rather than the correct 1111. Whereas those merely asked to copy it typically drew 1111. So conclusion is that French and Richards explained this result in terms of schematic knowledge of Roman numerals affecting memory retrieval. The findings supported the idea that subjects in the copy condition were more likely than subjects in other conditions to draw the clock without invoking schematic knowledge of Roman numerals. So this again says that how schema affects or influences our retrieval, our memory and our retrieval. We saw the clock. I show you the picture of the clock. You all saw the clock. And the moment I snapped it to the other screen, you wanted to recall. They were like the participants who recalled it later and drew the clock. They were all most of them were writing 1V as 4 because in their schema of the clock, in Roman numerals, it is 1V as 4. It is 1V as represented as 4 in Roman numerals. So it is their memory, it is their schema that is influencing their retrieval. Okay, but the ones who were copying directly, they wrote 11111 rather than conventional 1V as a Roman numeral because they were directly copying. So this clearly shows that when we are trying to recall something, maybe we are not recalling exactly what we saw. We recall because it is influenced by our schema. There is some kind of alterations, omissions, additions when we are trying to recall something, because when we are recalling or we are retrieving from our memory, it is always influenced by a schema. Many students get confused between bottom-up processing and top-down processing. Bottom-up processing is driven by senses, and whatever you see in your environment, that is called as bottom-up processing. For example, if there is a bed or a red color or a rectangle or a door, like in the wall clock I showed it to you, or you can see here in the picture. So whatever you are seeing here, the 4 is written not conventional as 1V, it is written as 1111, right? So whatever you are seeing, your senses are perceiving this, and at the understanding of it, you are telling that this is what it is. So you tell on the basis of whatever you are sensing in your environment. That is called as bottom-up processing. It is a very lower level cognition and it organizes the info. Now comes this top-down processing. What is top-down processing? It is not sensory driven like bottom-up. It is more schema driven. So whatever concepts or understanding we have in our schemas, on the basis of that, we try to retrieve, we try to recall and say something. For example, if somebody says that, draw what wall clock looks like in Roman numerals, or after showing you this clock, if somebody tells you, can you draw the picture of this? You're likely to write 1V as 4 rather than 1111. This is called as top-down processing. In top-down processing, it is all schema driven and not sensory driven, and it is high level cognition. So in top-down processing, whatever information that is coming, you are interpreting that information not on the basis of senses, but on the basis of your prior experiences. A very famous example of top-down processing is Troop effect. Let me show you some words, some letters here. Now in this picture, you can see that there are words like red, green, blue, black and pink. Now here, whatever the word is, it is different from the actual color of that word. Like for example, here you can see red is written in green, green is written in pink, blue is written in black, black in blue and pink in red. So all the colors of the words are different than what they actually mean. So if you are reading, if I tell you, please read the color of the word. So if you say green, pink, black, blue, red, that means you are using bottom-up processing. You are saying what you are sensing. But now, if I tell you to speak out the colors of the word again, but instead you make a mistake and say red, pink, black, black, pink. Now here what you have done, you're reading out the words rather than the color. This is a top-down processing. You are not using your senses here. According to your schema, your brain works as in reading the word. So you're reading the word rather than seeing the color of the word. So this is a top-down processing in Stroop effect. So I hope that you have understood what is bottom-up and what is top-down processing. If you have any problem at all, please write in the comments below. I hope you liked my video, and if you have any comments or you have not understood anything, please write in the comments below, and if you liked it, then please like and share and subscribe to my channel, because I'll be talking much more about IB psychology and in general videos as well.